Hello and welcome back to the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show. I am your host, Michael Stamatinos. And if you're new to us, it's so nice to have you here. Just really excited about what we're doing here. We're having conversations with leaders that are really focused on painstakingly reshaping the future of healthcare. And we're really passionate about a few different things. We're passionate about access, leadership, innovation, and adoption. And if it's your first time tuning in, let me just take a quick step back to kind of give you the rundown of what we're doing here. So, our focus is bringing stories of leadership and innovation to life, not just the wins, but also the things that are not really talked about. And we're trying to get real with people. So, this is a very honest conversation that we're having. And if you haven't had the opportunity to check out any of our other interviews, make sure that you check those out. But before you do that, wherever you are, hit the subscribe button now so any of the newest episodes come directly to you. So, as you know, our field, it's evolving. Things are always changing, rapidly changing, but we've got leaders that are embracing this change, that envision the future differently, and they embrace innovation and challenges. And we have no shortages of challenges that are happening right now. So, one of the leaders that is embracing those challenges and helping individuals work through those challenges is on the show today, and I am very excited. She's a friend, a dear friend. Joanne Chastman is a licensed clinical professional counselor who's been really at the forefront of transforming lives for over 20 years. And her mission is to empower adults that are grappling with anxiety, life transitions, and relationship challenges to rise above the circumstances and really carve a pathway towards resilience and personal growth. So Joanne leverages a variety of evidence-based techniques, including cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, and solution-focused brief therapy. So she believes, and I believe this too, that every individual holds the potential to reshape their narrative. And she provides a nurturing and supportive environment to facilitate this healing process. So she walks alongside her clients on the journey to discover meaning and purpose. Treating mental health, I'm just thinking about this from a workforce standpoint. This is the angle that we're going to take today and why I think it's so important. We have to keep our workforces humming along. And when employees are mentally strong, they're ready to tackle challenges, seize opportunities, and work together like a well-oiled machine, but like in a good context, not just as a robot, but to be able to be mentally healthy. So today, she's going to share her knowledge. She's going to share and offer insights into the shifting world of mental health and explain how some of these smart therapeutic approaches can power up your work life and communities. So my hope is that our conversation will provide a spark, something for our community because we care about our community immensely. So Joanne, it's great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me. So glad to be here to share, yes, a great conversation about mental health, what it's like in the workforce, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Hoping we can
Well,
just put a little nugget out there to folks.
that's right. That's right. Your background is really fascinating. And, you hosted a statewide radio talk show in Alaska. It's pretty unique. Can you maybe share a memorable moment from that period and how it sort of shaped your approach to mental health and advocacy?
Sure. Yes, I did that for 4 years when I lived in the state of Alaska, and it actually was a PBS station that had, it was like a 50,000 watt station. So it had a mass geographic appeal.
Hmm.
So it got to some of the most remote areas of Alaska. It was a show called Line One, Your Health Connection. It dealt with physical and mental health issues. And I was actually the host. I was not the therapist. I was actually interviewing people like myself. And I realized through this process, I got a handwritten note from somebody when I did a show on depression. And so I had an
Hmm.
expert came in, I was asking him, and then I actually just kind of announced a few places within the state that had free depression screenings. And I got a handwritten note, and someone wrote to me like 2 weeks later that said, you know what? Because you gave me that information, I went to that free health screening, that free depression screening in my little remote town way up north. and I was diagnosed with depression. And then I was then
Wow.
able to get the support that I needed. And I'm so grateful that you gave me that because I never would have known. So that
Mm.
moment in that, was like, oh my gosh, just one bit of information can really dramatically change somebody's life, which led me to go, wait a minute, I think I want to shift careers. And this is in the 90s. And that's what I did. So that's what I'm doing right now. Yes.
Your approach, it emphasizes aligning thoughts and feelings. How do you sort of integrate that philosophy into your sessions? And I guess what techniques have you found most effective?
Okay. So thoughts and feelings. So generally we have a lot of thoughts every day, but they aren't necessarily true thoughts. And so when we have a thought, we will get a feeling from the thought, which therefore makes us behave a certain way based on the feeling. And from that
Mm.
feeling, we're going to get a positive or negative consequence. If the thought is not true, we're going to have a feeling in alignment with not a true thought and therefore behave not in the way maybe that we want to. So, an example of that is like you're having lunch with a friend and the friend sends something and you have a thought, my friend doesn't like me. And so, oh, my friend doesn't like me, right? That's a thought. That's not a feeling. And from that feeling, from that thought, I might have the feeling of sadness or loneliness. And then from the feeling of sadness or loneliness, I'm going to have a behavior. So
Mm.
I might, call into work, say I'm not feeling well. I may cuddle up with the blanket. I may overeat. I may gossip with a friend. So you could see how when we have a thought to the feeling, to a behavior, to a consequence, it's so important to know that just because you have a thought, it doesn't mean it's true. So people who come in and they'll come in and what I'll do is I'll just kind of assess kind of what their thoughts are and
Mm.
feelings. And then I'll go, so, I'll kind of redirect them on, wait a minute, you're actually believing that something is not true. That's really not a true thought. And this is the evidence based on that person's story on why that's not a true thought. So that essentially is what we call cognitive behavior therapy, changing the way you think so that you can change the way you feel so that you can change the way you behave. And we have to be mindful of what are our
Right.
thoughts? What are our
Mm.
thoughts we're having?
It sounds as though that it's sort of this chain reaction of things that occurs, and it's this domino effect. And that if you really have an awareness, and we'll talk a little about that a little bit later, that you can really master that part. I mean, I've done a lot of work, inner work, uh, through professionals, coaching, etc. And kind of getting to this next thought is I'm just thinking about the workforce. I'm seeing things that are happening within our workforce. There's lots of challenges. What mental health challenges do you observe amongst, professionals, people that are coming in to see you? How do you feel employers can better support their teams?
Yeah, so if right, someone comes in and they may be overwhelmed by a lot of different things. They may be overwhelmed in their work life, their personal life. And so I kind of get into the nitty gritty if they're coming in and their primary issue or their primary overwhelm is in the workforce.
Right.
Part of our work is this really what they're designed to do? Because sometimes being uncomfortable in your work is thinking like, is this in alignment with
Mm,
what God has gifted me
mm,
in in my life? And so there's an assessment that I do in which I figure out kind of like what are their strengths, how are aligned with their work. Also, how I get down to just kind of the brass tacks of like, so tell me what a typical day looks like. What does overwhelm look like in that particular person's life?
Mm,
And even though when the question is, well, how can employers help that particular piece? It all starts with that individual. An example would be, someone did come in, right? Many times they're saying, like, I'm just so overwhelmed. I can't handle the projects. It's the deadlines, etc. My first question to them is, okay, well, how do you first start your day? What is it that you are doing when you are waking up in the morning and starting your own day? Do you give your time first to your employer? Or how do you start that day so that you give the time to yourself? How do you ground yourself? Where are you in terms of how you structure your day? Are you doing busy work? Do you have a good line of communication
right.
with your employer? Um, are you able to talk openly about deadlines? Are you able to ask for what you need if you find that what you've been given is not what you need? So my hope is that employers can be open to what their employees need first and
Mm,
foremost. But part of that is, what is that individual doing themselves to help set them up for success on a daily basis? Because life is overwhelming. You have, work overwhelm, and then if you happen to be married or a partner with children, that's a whole nother level that you're kind of
yeah.
balancing. You're in work overwhelm, maybe there's just breadcrumbs that get to the home environment, you know, and vice versa. If you're overwhelmed in your home life, how does that, are you giving breadcrumbs to work? So you really kind of have to, know thyself. And my job is to help first do the groundwork on kind of really what that looks like for them before I do the next deeper dive.
Mm. As you were mentioning that, I was just started thinking about the types of folks that are in our community. You've got they're all high, high potential leaders, right? They're super focused, very driven, want to make things happen. And in many instances, they're high stakes. So maybe they're part of a care delivery team where if high pressure situations and there are lives that are at stake. And then there are other situations, maybe it's an emerging company, a startup where they're trying to birth an idea, take it to market and move things along. In any event, in both of those situations, they're trying to climb something. They're trying to climb the mountain, um, only to find out sometimes it's that ladder, whatever it may be, is leaning against the wrong wall. Have you encountered clients, in this predicament? What's your advice for those that are realizing that their success hasn't really bred happiness? Can we talk a little bit about that? I feel like happiness is sort of fleeting, and there's been a lot of focus around that. But maybe if you can kind of give maybe your
Can there
perspective on that. Yeah.
So you're saying why are they not having happiness with success? Is that your question?
Yeah, in a sense.
Okay.
I mean, maybe they're in their mind, it's if I get to this, then this will be the end result. I'll be happy. If I raise $10 million for my company, I'll have the money that I need to kind of have the runway and then I'll be happy. Or we get this type of revenue, we'll be happy and we'll get the exit that we want. Or hey, we're going to be able to get to this level, build out the team, treat this number of patients, and then we'll be happy. But then it doesn't happen.
Okay. So let's kind of look at that word happy. Happiness is a fleeting emotion, just like all other emotions. So we think that to attain happiness, that is going to be a constant state of being. It's impossible to have happiness as a constant state of being.
Right.
What we want to think about is contentment, because you can be climbing the ladder and um and having moments of happiness, having moments of disappointment, but ultimately, can I be content regardless of the
Mm,
circumstances that I'm trying to do, accomplish, climb? Because if the feeling is I gotta get, I'm not happy, I'm not happy, I'm not happy, it's got to be about something else. It's
Mm,
something else that is missing, that they think that if I'm just always happy, I'll be okay. But happiness is just a flow of emotion, just like all the other emotions that we're supposed to have. So
mm,
happiness is not something that we should think about as attaining as the pinnacle, because we can have happiness in our lowest moments. We can have and we can be happy at our highest moments. If we think of contentment with all situations and like, wow, that was a great moment there, and that was a great moment, and that was a sad moment, and that was a disappointing moment. I had a great meeting with my boss here. I didn't have a good one, meeting over here, but can I be content? And can I be okay? Can I feel okay and be content
mm,
with the situation?
mm.
So that's when we're using that word happy, it's a
Yeah.
big word. It's a big word. It's impossible to always feel that level of happiness all the time, because that's what not that's what life isn't. Life is just, it always fluctuates. Always fluctuates.
As you mentioned, the fluctuation, there just seems to be lots of external stimuli, for example, media, and you having sort of been part of the media landscape. How do you perceive its current role, in influencing public mental health, both positively, negatively?
Huge, gigantic. Most people that come in terms of anxiety are overindulging in news. They're overindulging in social media. They are they're just intoxicated by it. It it influences mood big time. It increases fear big time. It is. So part of, if we're talking about the emotion of anxiety and someone says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so anxious." And then they list off, "Well, I saw this and I saw this and I saw this and then I commented on that on social media." And well, then that guy commented back. So they're really engrossed in it, and it affects mood, it affects relationships, it affects performance. It affects work performance. It affects relationships. It affects friendships. And so if there is, when they're sharing their story of their overwhelm, if they're sharing their story of, what's happening to them within their body and the anxiety that they're feeling, it's very fear-based, no matter where you stand on anything politically, or
Right,
whether you're
right.
seeing news all over the world that is hard to see. And so when I ask people to think about, is it possible that they can take a break from it? And and just like, do you have to wake up and turn on the news, right? Starting your day, is that something that we can think about changing for you? What are you feeding yourself mentally in the morning that's going to shape your mood for the day, that's going to shape your work performance during the day, that's going to help you with your anxiety today, that's going to give you that feeling of contentment today? So it's looking at that person's individual viewing habits and challenging them in a good way to be able to say, what would it be like if, tomorrow, just one day, you didn't watch the news, that you just did it for one day? Is that possible to do? And then let's talk about what that was like for you. So in my opinion, it has a tremendous impact on mood regulation.
So what's the answer here? Are you telling clients, hey, go on a little bit of a digital detox, go on a little bit of a digital diet, trim it back? It seems as though that this little weapon of mass distraction here it's like a drug. It really is. You're picking
It
up, you're
is.
looking at it, you're opening an app, closing an app, opening it up again. Like it's designed to keep you to look at it. How do you help people break from the shackles of that?
Oh, well, first there has to be the motivation and the desire to do that. Because if someone tells me there's no way, I'm not going to do it. I am not going to do it. Well, then that can't change because there's no motivation to change. But if they're generating different thoughts, which generates different feelings, and they're starting to feel better, that's going to be a win for them. Now, what we do know with there's now a big movement about no social media for children under the age of 16. My hope is that that's going to continue because it directly impacts their brain chemistry and only the ability to, and also no smartphones for young children. You can have, phones, maybe starting at 10,
Right.
but not having a smartphone, but maybe the ability to text and, and call. So that's that front. But as an adult, if you're highly addictive and right, if you get the heart, the like, the bing, the ting, that's giving you that dopamine hit. And but if you can try to, if I have that ability, which I think I do, to say, can your life look a little bit better if you actually paused? Because the time that you spend, on your apps, watching the news, you can do so much more with that time. If you had to add up all the hours that you spend pondering that post, thinking about rewatching that video, look how much time that you spent doing that when you could have maybe, if there is a social cause that you are in, have a heart for, well, I'll just say homelessness. What would that be like if you actually, instead of taking that time and ruminating over what you're seeing, that you actually went down and spent an hour serving up food for somebody? Like that is a direct difference with making a difference there versus, so what did that do for you? All it did was create more anxiety for you and
Hmm.
you feeling less disconnected. What would you like if you actually picked up the phone and actually called that friend that you haven't spoken to in 10 years instead of that instant gratification? So the person has to have the desire to want to shift as well. If there's no desire to, like, no, there's no way I'm going to put down my phone. But I do believe that people do want to. I do. They just don't know how to. And it's starting small, starting incrementally, starting like 10 minutes,
Hmm.
putting the phone away when you normally would be scrolling. Start small and build from it and build from that.
It just seems as though as the barrier to work, like there used to be a barrier back in the day where you didn't have a cell phone, you'd go to the office, and then when you leave work, you leave work. And then you got like a pager. You needed something, you got paged. And then the cell phone came, and it just seems as though there's this work-life balance. I don't even know, like, is there even work-life balance? And how do you how do you help people prioritize self-care? I mean, it's a thing. We know that self-care is important, but how do you help people prioritize? And I say this selfishly because I probably definitely need help on this, but I talk to many people throughout the week, whether they're clinicians or early stage founders, and there's always this there's just no balance. I'm just gonna throw it's there's no balance. It's hey, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. Everything's important. Everything's urgent. Like I know that's not healthy. How do you help people prioritize self-care?
Okay. So first, the hope is that the work environment, so we're like, if we're talking to leaders right now, right, who have a great influence, hopefully that they are attuned to kind of the work atmosphere. They're mindful of deadlines. They're not overloading people. They're creating maybe environments that breed connectivity to people and socialization and no and so that people are not lonely and
Hmm.
that they are attuned to the needs and listening to what their employees want. So the work-life balance is like, first off, is like, gosh, how do you know if you're off? How do you know if there's no balance? You typically will feel a lack of work-life balance physically. You'll get a stomach ache, you'll get
Mm,
migraines, you'll get headaches, you'll have jaw pain, so you can't sleep at night. So that is a really great indicator that something is off. Something is off in your world, and that word mindfulness, which, okay, it's not my favorite word, but it's like, and I say that because it's really overused, but it's just like a great self-awareness of what you're experiencing. Like, what's going
mm,
on in my life? Gosh, I'm just curious.
mm,
Have a curiosity about yourself. What's going on that I'm feeling this way? Am I afraid to talk to my boss about this? Do I have guilt about not spending time with my kids? Am I prioritizing my life? What matters in my life? Do I have good boundaries? Do I say, I'm sorry, but I can't accomplish that today? Or I turn off my phone, or I don't answer my emails. I see a lot of teachers, and one of the things that they share with me is they will get a call or an email from a principal at 8 o'clock at night. So they're part of their mix. They're like, it's my principal. My principal's calling me. Do I pick up? Do I not?
yeah.
I got to read a book to my kid at bedtime, but they're calling. Do I take the call? Do I not? So when you establish good boundaries, you teach people how to treat you. So if you don't check the email, if you give yourself that, okay, 6 o'clock, that's it, I'm not going to do it. People understand, yeah, don't email Michael after 6 o'clock because he's not going to answer it anyway. So you teach people how to treat you. You have to be mindful of where your balance is, where your work-life balance is, and to find out and to be curious about what is off. If you know what is off, then someone like me can help do that deeper dive to manage that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Super interesting. And as you were kind of talking about that, it just sort of stimulated something. But without breaching confidentiality, I mean, can you discuss a particularly challenging case that, really impacted you, from a personal growth perspective, from a professional growth perspective?
From a personal growth perspective, yeah. Um, I used to see teenagers a long time ago. And um there was a 16-year-old girl that I was seeing, and I noticed that she would always be wearing her coat in session, and it was
Mm,
summertime. And I was like, wow, this is just really significant here. Why is she keeping her coat on? And I was just like, hmm. So I said, hey, you want to take off your coat? Each time I would see her, she says, no, no, don't want to take off my coat. I go, you might be more comfortable. It's kind of hot in here. And she's like, no, no, no. After I got to know her and she started to trust me, she took off her coat. She
mm,
had, she was cutting herself, and she was cutting her legs, and she was cutting her arms, and she had cut profanity in her stomach, and she didn't want me to see it. It had a profound impact on me because of the pain that she was having so much. And cutting essentially means like, especially, it means like you have all this emotion and
mm,
you cut to release emotion, and you see blood and it makes you feel something. So that's kind of the definition of cutting. It made a profound impact because she was a teenager, and she was, and she didn't have a place to go, and her mother did not know, and her father didn't know, and they didn't really care because um she waited like 2 hours to get picked up from her appointment, and it broke my heart. And I realized, like, at that moment, like, there's a lot of people that are suffering and you just don't know. And I was fortunate to kind of put the pieces together to realize, this young girl was suffering.
mm.
and that you just don't know what people are going through. And and sometimes, a question in the workforce, for a leader and whoever's listening or watching is like, hey, are you okay today? Is all okay? Because you can kind of tell when someone's off, if their productivity is off, if they're you can usually tell. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, are you okay? You seem off today, you know? And you're probably, hopefully, you might get an answer like, yeah, my kid was up all night throwing up and I'm just exhausted. So we hope compassion can come in to the workforce, the leaders, the compassion that says, hey, people are hurting and you might be hurting too, by the way.
Mm.
And that word mindfulness or self-awareness is in a leader, you have to be so careful about projecting your stuff on other people. So if you are
Oh,
managing a whole bunch of people and you didn't get sleep the night before, and then you decide to just, for lack of a better word, vomit all over other people. And people will never know that because they're going to walk away going, what a jerk. What a jerk. It would have been so much better if that manager leader could have said, rough night last night, guys. Bear with me today. A little bit of vulnerability in the workplace. When you do that, people will give you grace. They really will because they're having their stuff too.
I'm so glad that you brought up vulnerabilities because as we've been talking about workforce, I've been thinking about, I know a bunch of nurses and they're tough, like tough, resilient, even any kind of clinician. Oftentimes even therapists, you're seen as sort of this pillar of strength. I'm even just curious from how do you navigate some of these vulnerabilities and uh, uh, how do you seem human? How do you take care of your stuff? How do you continue to take care of what you need to take care of so that you can kind of be there for your clients? And I ask that because there are clinicians that are on the front lines that are silently suffering. Yes, many are leaving the industry altogether, but there are many that are silently suffering. What
Mhm.
advice do you give to them to sort of at least alleviate that a little bit?
Yeah, I agree. You're right. So many are serving other people in the healthcare industry. And I'm a believer of if you can't serve people to the level of your capacity if you don't serve yourself. And it's sometimes there is the belief that, well, that's selfish. That's selfish. And it's like, no, actually, self-care is not being selfish. It allows you to further serve other people better. So back to self-awareness. If you are toast, if you are, then look at your day going, okay, back to how do I start my day? And if it's like, well, I just can't get up earlier. And it's like sometimes the answer is you can 15 minutes, 15 minutes of just entering your day. Have you entered your day
Right,
and centered yourself? Have you entered your day and maybe prayed? Have you entered your day and listened to the music have you
right.
read something, basically feeding yourself? I can't take away the overwhelm of the environment, but you can control how you enter the environment. If you are a doctor, if you are a nurse, if you are a clinician, a therapist, one of the things that I do is I have to center myself before I meet with each person. And that is
Mm,
like, just like, and for me, it's prayer. And it's like, all right, God, how do I want to show up for this person today? Help me to help themselves. So it just calms me. It it calms me so that I can enter in there calm.
mm.
And if you are rushing from person to person to person, if you are a therapist that sees back to back to back to back people, you really are not serving them to the level that you can. You have to just give yourself that small window before you show up to a meeting, before you show up to a patient, and say, okay, how do I want to show up? I want to be kind. I want to be gracious. I want to be giving. I want to be patient. I want to be loving. And that's just a simple 10-second regrounding before entering overwhelming situations.
Do you say that out loud or do you say it internally?
I say it internally if sometimes I say it out loud too. I have a
Okay.
great work partner, and sometimes, we'll be seeing our people and we'll be right next to each other in the same room, share a wall, and we won't even see each other during the day. Well, occasionally we'll come out and we can just look at each other as co-workers, and we can feel the heaviness of each other. And sometimes we just like, okay, it's just a centering of just like, let me be present instead
Hmm.
of chaotic. We can't serve people if we are entering situations chaotically.
What about laughter? We laughed a lot in certain situations. Can you talk about the concept of laughter and how integrating that has sort of maybe transformed sessions, even possibly a client's outlook on their challenges?
So when we, talk about life situations, um, in sessions, and I will tell them up front too that I'm a believer in laughter, and using laughter as a tool whenever they're feeling a certain way, that they're feeling wonky about something, or we'll
Hmm.
try and look at laughter when they're sharing a funny story, and I will laugh with them. And so it normalizes something that could feel really intense, or it could be, we can look at it through the lens of laughter and find the funny in some of the stories. So laughter is critical. I know that, at the part of when we talk about watching things, what do we watch? What do we look at television? Mine is comedy, always comedy, because it's just levity. It's self-deprecating, laughing at ourselves. And I'm that way, and I'll share with clients about a funny thing. So it helps them know that, hey, you can laugh about that particular thing. You can laugh about that situation when you went to the funeral, you know, so it is a huge part of relief and looking at the glass half full and finding the humor in situations.
Yeah, I feel like that's a skill. That's a muscle that you can develop to be able to use that.
Well, allowing yourself to do it, allowing yourself to laugh, and then choosing your content. If you are watching something, choose the content. So if you're, watching, like, what are you watching at night before you go to sleep? You're
Mm.
watching that World War II that documentary. That is going to just, or you watching Seinfeld, something like that. Are you watching something that's going to bring levity, soften your body so that you can ease into a nice sleep? Yeah.
Brilliant. What's the best way for, our community to follow your work, to learn about some of the things that you're doing? Maybe just give a little bit of a commercial about what you're doing before we go into some of our fun rapid fire questions to wrap up.
Ah, okay. So, all right. So, a little bit about myself then. So,
Yeah, commercial about Joanne Chastity.
commercial.
The word's yours.
Okay. Well, here's a commercial. Well, anyway, so for myself, um, I'm a straight shooter. And I tell people that ahead of time that come in. I believe in going back to the past, meaning like our childhood, to understand our present, but I don't stay in the past, because when
Mm.
people come to me, they're in a present wound. They're in a present feeling and they want to feel better. but I got to kind of just dip into the past to understand why they're feeling maybe the way that they're feeling. And I also think that you don't have to be in therapy forever. You don't. It could be so short term. It could be one time. It could
Mm,
be, and the majority of the people that I see, I only see a handful weekly. I mostly see them every other week, every third week. And I tell them, you're getting better. You're getting better. You don't need to see me. You're doing well. You're coping well. You don't need to. So that's a part of kind of who I am and my style. And yeah, that's about it.
amazing. All right, we're gonna do some fun rapid fire questions to wrap up. You cool
All
with
right,
that?
do it.
Okay. All right. What's your go-to self-care ritual after like a really long day?
Watching something funny.
Okay. What about a book? Are there any books that have significantly influenced your sort of approach to counseling?
I am currently reading The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins.
Mm,
It's new, it's trendy. It's actually a compilation of a whole bunch of psychological theories, but it's done and in a way that is digestible.
favorite travel destination to unwind, recharge?
I would say to rewind and recharge. I like going to Florida. I'm a water person. I like lakes, rivers, streams, oceans, anything water, anything soothing
All
like
right.
that.
One word to describe you, your leadership style. One word. What would that be?
Passionate.
Love it. All right, last question. So for those that have been tuning in, if you have one, because innovation is all about taking action. If you could sort of deduce down what you've mentioned today for people to take one action, what would that action be?
I would say one action would be take one small step in something that you're terrified to do. One small step. So if you could
I
think
love
about
that.
what you're terrified in doing, take one small step.
There have been many golden nuggets throughout this conversation today, Joanne. Lots. And my
Good.
hope is that for those, if you tuned in today and you found this conversation to be helpful for you, would you mind sharing it on social media? Would you mind commenting about what was in it that triggered you in a good way? We want to know that. And share it, like it, whatever you can. Um, because we know that if we want to make things better, you have to take small steps. So, Joanne, thank you for today. It's been amazing.
Thank you,
You're obviously
Michael.
welcome to come back. My objective today was to how do we care for the community? And thank you for caring for our community and providing your insights today. I'll
It's
speak
been
to you soon.
great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.